that can help them achieve their vision. Before we start the session, we would like to present a short AV co-produced by Mr. Anup Singh first. Can I please have the AV on the screen?
कुड़ी नहीं हो देखनी
कुड़िया तो बहुत देख ली है
फिर कुड़ी होगी
वेखला भी मुंडा होगा
कितनी सोहनी
ओ मुंडा होया तेरा मुंडा
बदला दिरा है मैं तो तुरिया जाना नटा कर आया मेरा बनड़ा कर आया
पापा जी
हाँ बच
कौन
एक टीवी है जो वो सब दे सकती है जो तो कोई खो नहीं सकता
फट्टा शिकारी
ते तो तेरी धी दा हथ मंगदा अपने पति
जे तू खुश रहेंगी ते कमर खुश रहेगा
और कितनी बार मैं शराब पे आके सब भोगाऊंगा
The second AV of Miss
A
Aditi
famous
Anand.
fakir from India. Good for you. I'm gonna make my friend disappear.
This I must see.
Ta-da!
All right, Copperfield, where is he?
I was born in Mumbai. When I was young, one of the most mind-blowing things I discovered was that I was poor.
Are we poor? We are.
I no longer wanted to be poor.
Aja, you have to keep out of trouble.
We did all sorts of magic. Ma, I am taking you to Paris. With a passport and a fake €100, we were going to Paris.
Paris is the most beautiful city in the world.
Honey, I can't find the keys to my car. Have you found them? Sorry, I really have to test the living room before buying them. My boss is driving me nuts.
Is the pressure getting to you, honey?
Maria and I bonded instantaneously. I'll see you tomorrow at the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, here in Paris, we usually do it on the cheeks.
Chance was definitely not on my side. Where are we going?
London
London?
I may have met someone.
Oh my God!
Sir, please, I have to go back to Paris.
You're all going to Spain!
He's handsome and he's gentle. He is creative.
Why are you half naked in my trunk?
We are going to Libya.
It was nice meeting you, Aja.
You not allowed here.
Just send me back to Paris.
Do you understand English?
We have been speaking English.
Such an awesome clips. Thank you. May I now please request Mr. Ramachandran, Asia Correspondent Variety, who will be moderating the session along with panelist Mr. Anup Singh, writer-director of the Wandering Film Company, Ms. Aditi Anand, promoter, director, Little Red Car Films, Mr. Kulmeet Makkar, CEO, Producers Guild of India, and Ms. Teresa Hoefert, Film Funding Executive, Medienboard, Berlin-Brandenburg. May I please welcome all the esteemed guests to be on this stage. Thank you. Over to you, Naman.
Can you hear me? Clearly you can. So we don't have much time, so let's get right into it. Anup, let's begin with you. So interestingly, Song of Scorpions, it's a multinational co-production, much like Aditi's film. It's got funding from Switzerland and France and Singapore. Why isn't there any funding from India?
Why is that, sorry?
I didn't see any, apart from a line production company, Kriti, I didn't see any Indian co-producer. Is that by design?
No, not at all. I think I spent quite a lot of time trying to find an Indian producer. And what I did find is an Indian producer who said to me, we have a wonderful man in Singapore who would be very interested in your film. So he sent me off to Singapore. Yeah. Let me talk a little about, this whole wonderful gift that filmmakers have received in terms of co-production. I've made 3 feature films as yet, and all of them are co-productions. My first film took me 10 years to make, co-production.
That's the name of a river.
The name of a river. Kissa took me 10 years to make, co-production. And at the end of it, I asked myself, I think I should have looked back a little and perhaps spoken to an astrologer to tell me how long am I actually going to live. Because of the amount of time that it takes, or took me, to put these films together, I don't have much time left, But then we come to the Song of Scorpions, which I managed to put together with, of course, my producers in 2 years. And how did that happen? It's a journey, and it is as mad as Aditi's film Fakir. When I was doing Kissa, we had a producer who was always around us saying, I want to be a part of this film. And we said, look, our budget is already done, so thank you, but no thank you. And this producer was Saskia Vischer, Swiss producer, who would finally become the main producer of the Song of Scorpions. Now, why did that happen? Because even when we said to her that, sorry, thank you, she, at her own cost, came to India while we were shooting Kissa. She came and she watched us. While I was doing the post-production, she would often invite me to meals and talk to me about cinema, talk to me about what I was doing. When the film finally had its festival journey, she was there at practically every 3rd or 4th festival, ready to see the film again. So it's not surprising that when I was ready with the Song of Scorpions, she's the first one I went to, because she had proven something to me. And I think this is really one of the most important things that I've learned about co-production, is that we are, of course, very happy when someone decides to join us. But the question is, how long will this person really stay with us and will not abandon us halfway? So one of the things that I learned is really, of course, celebrate when someone says, yes, I'm going to co-produce your film, but find out whether this person will actually stay with you for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and actually stay 10 years. And there are producers who stayed with me for 10 years. For Kissa, there are 4 producers from 4 different countries who stayed and supported me through all those really hard years. And I learned the other thing then, that Of course, we as filmmakers sacrifice. We make a lot of sacrifices. But the producers do the same. If I'm ready to spend 10 years of my life for a film, the producer is doing the same. And that is the producer that I want. You know, that is the producer, of course, that we're all dreaming about, hoping about. And if we are lucky, we'll find that producer. But that is just the beginning of the story in any co-production, especially in Europe, because then we are looking at funding. All right. And with the Song of Scorpions, we were very lucky. Saskia and I, we had the project ready in about a month's time to send it out to various funding agencies. And we first sent it, of course, to Switzerland because that's where we live. And we got an immediate yes. And they offered us, you know, with great Swiss generosity, a lot of chocolates and money. From the regional fund or from the national fund? From the national fund. And yes, because they are connected to each other, yeah. So immediately we had money to begin. And here I would like to come to my second point, that we as directors, we usually see very little money. So whenever we see some money, it looks like a lot, you know. And that is the other thing to be careful about. When you plan your film, be very honest with yourself and your producers and ask, just how much does this film really need to be made the way I see it? That is really where you have to start, all right? And be honest with yourself, be honest with your film, with your producer. How much do I really need to make this film? So Saskia and I sat down together. We were very happy we'd received the Swiss funding. And as soon as we received the Swiss funding, we had a French producer who had also produced Kissa join us. And he sent to a fund, Cinéma du Monde in France, and we got an immediate yes. All right, so some more money. 3 of us sat down together and we went through every camel, every grain of sand, every bottle of diesel, every roti and rice that we would need to make this film. Of course, the cast and crew, and you know, and we even budgeted the buttons that we might need for the costumes. I'm exaggerating a little, but you get the idea. And we realized that we had a good amount of money, but we needed more. So Saskia then said that she had a friend, and he was Michel Merct, who is like one of the most celebrated producers in Europe. He's produced films like Elle, Tony Edman, and just the year before, he had 8 films at Cannes as producer. You know. So she said that she's going to send him the script. So I had visions of another 10 years of my life, you know, passing by. She sent him the script, and I think he received it in 2 days or so. And he called 2 days later, asking Saskia to come visit him in Monaco, where he lives. And she went there, she went through the script with him page by page. She showed him Kissa, and she came back with a check. Yeah. Again, quite a lot of money. And again, I said to her, it's not enough for this film. Yeah. And she agreed with me, because we had worked so hard on the budget, we knew exactly what we wanted. So she said, Anup, now the only thing to do is to go to an Indian producer. Now, many of you sitting here, I would presume, have been into that labyrinth, you know? So I won't talk about that a bit, too much. However, I did know Shiladitya Bora. At that time, he used to work with Drishyam Films, and he had seen Kissa, and we had talked. And I went to him and I said, look, we are looking for now a very small amount of money if you could help. He said, yes, fantastic. There are these people in Singapore.
That's Aurora.
That is Aurora Enterprise, run by Justin Damon. And that is where it took a lot of time. I think it took Justin and his team about 3 months to say yes, and then 3 more months to confirm that they had said yes. All right? But finally, yes, it was a yes. And we, at that point then, had all the money together. I would just like to say then very quickly that what really made this film possible and what allows me to stay on very good terms with my producers are a few things, and which I'd like to share with you. One, I never lie to my producers. I tell them from the very beginning how I see the film and how I would like to make it. Two, I never tell them that the film is going to be a hit. Three, I listen to them. And it is out of this working together, collaborating together, exchanging really possibilities together that for me is the core of co-production.
Thank you. I'll come back to you to ask you about those 20 years in a second. But Aditi, Fakir has had an extraordinary journey from a co-production point of view. So can you quickly walk us through how it happened?
I think Fakir has had an extraordinary journey. I think I've had an extraordinary journey with this film. And it kind of all started here, actually, at the Film Bazaar, with another film. So my French co-producer was here with a Portuguese film. And he was in the co-production market, and we were talking about that film. And, you know, it was an interesting film, but towards the end of that conversation, you know, he said, well, you know, and he pulled out this yellow spiral-bound docket from under the table. And he said, you know, I have the rights to this book, and I don't know if this is going to be interesting to you. And I looked at it, and it was called The Extraordinary Journey of the Fakir that got stuck in an IKEA wardrobe. They got trapped in an IKEA wardrobe. I was like, yeah, you know, of course, this is the film that I want to do. At that time, it was still very, very early days. There was actually another director attached to the project at the time. But as I flipped through the docket, you know, when I came to the page about who they had envisaged for cast, they were kind of the usual suspects in terms of the people who play Indian roles, the men who play Indian roles. And I had recently seen some work that Dhanush had done. And I suggested to my partner, the French producer at the time, that, you know, there's an Indian actor and I think he'd be fabulous. And perhaps it's an opportunity for us to be able to open up, you know, another market, you know, open up another opportunity for a film like this in India. You know, I was very lucky actually with both with the producer and with the director at that time. They, you know, were very open to the idea. They went and watched a couple of films. How they managed to, you know, figure out those Tamil films, you know, I don't know. But they called back about 2 weeks later and said, yeah, sounds interesting, let's... So I cold called Dhanush. I had no idea, I had never met him. I sent him a message, a very long message. And you know, at that time, smartphones were not as smart, so you still had to like type every word, you know, every letter 3 times to get to the... So I sent him a really long SMS. And I think I got a response in about, I would say 13 minutes. He had replied saying, sounds interesting, let's talk. So I sent him the same yellow docket. It was a scan of that docket. I sent it to him. He wanted to read the script. He flew to London. He went and met the director. And within 6 weeks of having started this conversation, he was on board. And he is an incredible person to collaborate with. I mean, I would say that the experience of the film was very rewarding, but the experience of working with him was just, I mean, I would encourage everybody to try and work with him. He's really special. Once we had him on board...
Share his number later with everyone.
He's changed it ever since he gave it to me. Once we had Dhanush, it kind of changed the whole dynamic of the conversation that we were happening in India. Subsequently, finally, the structure of the film was India, France, Belgium. This was the official part of the co-production. We had a fund from Singapore as well. They were the kind of primary investors. And we had a conglomerate of investors from the US. We had some pre-sales in Europe. So the contract for that film, just imagine the time zone, for all of these people to sign this contract. So when the United States used to wake up, Singapore was fast asleep. And so it took me almost 6 months to finally get that contract signed. And I think what I would say in addition to what you said, that collaboration is at the heart of co-productions. The other thing, I think from a producer's point of view, is at the heart of co-productions is endurance. It's an endurance run. And you just have to pace yourself and keep going and keep going and keep going, because there are really moments. It didn't take 10 years. I think we were lucky. You had already set the ground for what was going to come, but it took us 4 years. It took us the director dropping out, our lead actress fell off a horse a few months before production. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. But I think what was really special was, and in that I would say is the third essential part of doing co-productions from a producer's point of view, is to consistently learn. And what I learned on this film was that apart from the creative aspect, apart from the very rewarding aspect of filmmaking, there's also this aspect of financial and fiduciary responsibility. And with that comes learning and understanding tax structures, how various countries in other parts of the world look at money, how tax authorities look at money. I think the reason that we succeeded in putting this very, very complex structure together is because we finally were able to understand how money works in every country individually. And I think that that's a part of the learning process that would really hyperleap Indian producers into being able to do more co-productions if we were to be able to understand financial structuring and tax structuring and that kind of thing a little better. Maybe even just a basic sort of approach to data, understanding data and understanding structures on an Excel sheet. It wasn't where I started. I hated mathematics. I left it when I was in class 10. But yeah, I've really come back to it and now I really enjoy it. So I would say that for me, so collaboration, endurance, and constantly learning, I think these were the three things that really brought the film to where it got to.
So that brings us neatly to Teresa. Now, Teresa, obviously you're a film funding executive, vastly experienced. Now, they both talked about their journeys. For many of the first-time filmmakers here, a co-production, an international co-production is a very daunting process. So, is there someone, you for example, or someone like you, are there people in place in Europe or elsewhere who can help filmmakers navigate this process? And if so, are they very expensive?
That's a tough question, Naman. Who's there to help navigate the process? I think that it's not so easy when you're starting out, for sure. But ultimately, I think if I listen to what Anup and Aditi were both saying, fundamentally there's a key person, and that's the producers behind the projects. I think that's something that I would try and stress in terms of financing. I mean, it's so essential to have a producer supporting you, a producer who believes in your project, who you have affinities with, and who's supporting you. And that producer will bring the expertise that they have and be able to sort of push the project and make it happen, I think. How to find those producers for people who are newcomers,
there are all kinds of different programs that exist where young sort of professionals, film professionals, can try and apply to and get into, whether they're things like the talent campuses in Berlinale, in Berlin, or in Durban, or wherever. There are networking things like EAVE, which is European Audiovisual EAVE. It's a network. There are various kinds of networks which you can try and sort of get into, because they bring you into a circle of other professionals, so it's an easy way to find people that you can work with. Finding the people, that's the important thing, and there isn't a recipe for that, but I must say that as representing a fund, I often get asked in different countries where I am, I often get asked for, do you have a list of producers? Because the only way that you can actually access many of the funds in Europe, public funds in Europe, is through a local partner, through a producer based in the country, whether it's France or Germany or Spain. In order to access funds and apply, you need to have somebody who's based in that country. Just like Saskia is based in Geneva, so she was able to apply to the National Film Fund, and then they applied to the Regional Film Fund in the area of Geneva. I mean, Anup, you're living there too, but still, it always functions through producers. Now I just lost my train of thought.
No, it makes a perfect sense.
Yeah, it's right. So people are always asking me, well, can I have a list of producers? And, somewhere, we used to have a list of producers, which was simply a list, and people would be thrilled, and I hesitated always to give it out, because I thought, oh my God, these producers who are on the list are going to kill me someday if they find out I'm the one who gave out this list, because some people would just send emails en masse to everybody on the list. So somewhere down the line, we stopped giving out lists. And I basically say to people now, look at the films. If there's a film that you're watching and you find it interesting, look at the credits. If there's a co-producer from a certain country, that find ways of finding people who you may have affinities with, somebody who might actually believe in your project and come on board with you. Because like you're saying, it's key to the development of a project. But maybe I could just say something about funding. Yeah. So finding these local people, the European funding system is not that complicated, really. There's a lot of public funding available, and there are basically two streams. So there's one stream which a lot of people know, where directors can directly access, and those are funds which, for example, like the World Cinema Fund, which is attached to the Berlinale, like the Hubert Walls Fund that's attached to the Rotterdam Film Festival, like Vision Sud-Est in Switzerland, like the SOR Fund in Norway, and the list goes on. So those are funds, public funds, relatively free money, where directors from generally what's considered the Global South can apply directly to those funds. Then there's another huge pot of money of public funding, because that's the way Europeans primarily fund their films, more through private funding. So very different from like the US system, or even in India where there's a lot of private money going in. In Europe, a lot of the art house, international art house works are funded by public money. So the one stream are these funds which you can access directly from whatever country you're living in. And then there are all of the other ones. Medienboard is one of those, but it's, Medienboard, the fund that I work for. In Berlin, there are a number of other regional funds in Germany, and then you'll find the same sort of structure, all kinds of other funds in different countries across Europe. And in order to access those, you need to begin, it's the producer, a locally based producer, who actually is the one who applies to the project. And that doesn't mean, okay, well, I have a friend who's got a cousin, and actually he's got a production company, and so I can apply then. It's a little bit more difficult than that. For example, in Berlin, we have a lot of applications, because there are a lot of producers a lot of producers in Germany, a lot of producers in Berlin. We get a lot of applications, and yeah, the competition's a bit tough, and it's getting tougher because, in a way, there's less money going for certain types of projects. But, you know, maybe I could give an example of some of the types of projects that we have funded here, starting off with like the Lunchbox. The German co-producer is actually here. Then we did Ritish's second film, or not second, we funded a second film of Ritish, which was The Photograph. We funded Kissa, another one, What Will People Say? And
that's Iram's film from Norway.
yeah, exactly. So that all the way to Dawn 2. So we're pretty open. I mean, we're very open to everything, and we're quite open internationally. And there are a lot of other funds in Europe that are also open internationally. But in order to have a chance, you have to come with a good package. And that means having a producer who knows how to access the funds, who knows how to deal with the whole circuit. There are a couple of other conditions in order to apply, but then there's a whole process. But once again, it's the partners, the people that you're working with, and finding the right partner and the right producer. And once you find the right producer to help push your project, you know, if they're a solid professional, they're going to know how to do it, you know. So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything I can add to that. I mean, it's tough to get the funding, but there are possibilities out there, and there are a lot of, I think there are a lot of different possibilities, and there is, thank goodness, a lot of public funding available for all kinds of projects.
Thanks. We'll come back to you in a bit. Now, Kulmeet has two sets of news. Actually, no, he's got some bit of news to give you, but that can wait till the end of this discussion. Would you like to tell us about the challenges, commonly faced challenges during an international co-production?
I think she probably has said it a couple of times when she was talking. We don't have public fund available in India. That's the biggest challenge we have. Co-productions, when you follow the government treaties which have been signed with 13 countries, it's always important that we have equal amount of funding from both the sides. India, unfortunately, barring few exceptions, which probably NFDC would have done that in the past, we don't have a public fund which independent producers can access. So if you have international partner who's willing to, or who's able to bring fund from their side, and if the Indian partner not able to bring fund through a public fund available, then he has to run around to get the private partnership or private funding on that account. So this becomes far more challenging for any independent producers to produce it. There are advantages of the co-production treaties which we have signed, I'm sure. Everyone would be aware of that. It gives you a lot of access to resources, that gives access to the tag of a national film. You can have a better release facilities. You can participate in film festivals. You can participate in the national award. Unless, in my mind, unless and until we give access to our independent producers to the public fund, co-production will not succeed. Then it will become more like a co-venture. That can be any kind of partnership. Co-production, which is as per the treaty, needs to have equal amount of support from both the sides. So if I take you now to the next point, what has changed? What has changed over the years? First of all, good news is that it is much easier to access, number one, production incentives. I think it's a matter of time because I've been part of many discussions with the government. The good news is that audiovisual sector has been, I'm sure it was announced number of times in the last few months. It is now part of the champion sector. Champion sector comes under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, where there is a special focus given on certain sectors. So audiovisual is now part of the 12 service sectors. It means that there will be a financial or fiscal support which the government of India will provide. Number two, when I talk about production incentive, I'm sure some of you would have spent time with various state governments. FFO has been coordinating various workshops, holding workshops. By and large, every single state is now open. Either they have a policy or they are in the process of formalizing a policy of giving production incentive to the films, which can be Indian films as well as international films. It means that when you film your production in India, you get monies. What percentage of that? That will differ from state to state. These are the state production incentive. On top of it, Naman, what probably would happen, I think it's a matter of time because this is part of the champion sector, is that there are various support initiative by the government, and co-production is also one of those verticals which government is looking into this. Probably creating a public fund which can take care of, say, 20 films, 30 films in a year or over a period of 2 years. So if you get, say, 50% funding from overseas, and if the Indian government is willing to fund you for the balance 50%, what more we can ask for? I mean, that life makes easier. Then we don't have to spend 10 years, or we don't have to go back to college to learn maths. Only thing is we should know how to manage that fund. That would be important. But that's you know, Naman, the amount of work in the last 2 years, there's so much of work which is available. We are looking at producing content beyond theatrical. It opens up doors for new filmmakers, technicians, writers. So much of work is happening. The challenge has always been the financial part of it. With little support from the government on the champion sector, I think this will be a major, major change, the way we participate or we make career in this industry.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you as well on that. Going back to you, Anup, those 20 years, what did you learn not to do? 10 years per film, so you must have, what was your learning on the way? What were you doing wrong? What were you doing right?
When I made my very first film, The Name of a River.
That was a co-production with the British Film Institute.
It was NFDC, the British Film Institute, and Bangladesh. And it was my very first film. I took all the responsibility myself. My maths is as good as Aditi's earlier, and it remains at that point. My biggest mistake was that I did not approach a line producer, someone who is deeply embedded and has the experience of working within the country, whether it's India or, let's say, part of the film was shot in Bangladesh. And when I did Kissa and when I did The Song of Scorpions, these two films are impossible without, let's say, Rakesh Mehra, who, according to me, is the finest line producer here in the country. My producers were very, very hardworking, dedicated, but really these two films are impossible without Rakesh Mehra. So line producer, someone who understands the country's industry, understands the market. By market, I don't mean, the sales market. I mean equipment, for example. Where the hell do you get your equipment for? And what kind of deals can you make with your equipment? The crew. Where can you get the crew that you want for this film? Not just generally any crew, So the line producer who has that experience of listening to you as the director, as the producer, and then making a team according to your specifications and the ambition of the film. So I think for me that was the biggest learning, really. One, to always connect myself with a line producer. Second, and this is I think a general thing, and I think Aditi also mentioned this, is Teresa, is how do you present your project? We are in a highly competitive world. The funds are many, but they are limited. you know, and there are a number of projects for each and every fund. How do you present your project? And here, really, it's the filmmaker and the producer working together. Your presentation has to be not only the spirit of the film that you want to make, but you have to reach out to the spirit of the person or the fund that you are appealing to. All right. And that means studying that fund, studying the kind of projects that they have done earlier on, you know, and seeing what is it within this group who probably run the fund. What is it within this group? What are they looking at? How are they looking at it? All right. And by that, I don't mean that you water down your project. What I mean is that you heighten your presentation, you know. Okay. Those aspects that will speak directly to the fund, you know. Whether it's the human values, whether it's the story values, whether it is the idea of another country, you know, working with another country, working with another crew. Different funds have different values. All right. Some of them are very happy to fund a film because it is opening their country to a larger worldview. Certain funds are very interested because they are getting another audience, you know. Certain funds are very good because they want their crew to work elsewhere and to be employed, you know. So there are different reasons why funds work. Yeah. And your presentation, your passion has to come through. And you have to find your way of doing that.
Is going back to yesterday, on one of the panels, Martin Rabatz said that to the West, it doesn't make any difference who you have in your film, if it's an Indian film. For them, it's just an Indian film with people speaking in Indian. Yes, I'm just quoting him verbatim, Martin, if you're here. And there's
We're happy to see Irfan Khan in films.
Sorry?
We're happy to have Irfan Khan.
Yes, so that was my question. To you, Aditi, as well, did having Dhanush make a difference in getting international funding, and did having Irfan make a difference? And Teresa, if you can expand on what you said as well, and how it made a difference to you.
I think Irfan made a very big difference, receiving some of the funds. Certainly not the Swiss fund, you know. But perhaps in Germany, I think it made a difference because they seemed to be more aware of him, you know. For the Song of Scorpions, I think Irfan and Golshifte Farhani did make a difference. In Switzerland, I think by that time, both the Lunchbox as well as Kissa had been seen. People were aware of it, and they knew Irfan also from some of the Hollywood films that he had done. It made a lot of difference. Golshifte, of course, is very, very well known in various parts of Europe, especially in the French-speaking world. So in France, that made a lot of difference, yeah.
Can I say quickly, I made a joke about Irfan because we like his acting, but it's for us, it's not really just a question of whether Irfan is playing in it or Shah Rukh Khan or who it is. It's always a package. It's always the decisions are really taken on a number of factors, and they're always weighed differently in each project. But we look at the screenplay, we read the screenplay, we look at the previous work, we look at who the partners are, all the co-producers, the financing, who's the distributor, who's the world sales agent on board. Do all of those things seem to make sense? So it's maybe apart from a film like Shah Rukh Khan, where it's quite clear what the whole motor is, and if they come to, they came for Don 2 to shoot in Berlin, and then there are different elements different factors involved in that kind of, in supporting that kind of film than there are in supporting Kissa or Lunchbox. But it's not because of a star, but I think people who are working, for example, in the independent art house scene are aware of some actors. It's not, I don't think in the West, nobody's, I mean, okay, they're not as well known as they are here, but yeah, it's not because of one of those stars that the project is going to be funded, except maybe in the case of Shah Rukh Khan because of the whole motor, something like that.
Aditi?
You know, yes, 100% it made a difference. Sometimes it made a good difference, and sometimes it made things more difficult. So, for example, if you had Dev Patel, there are things that would have been easier. But what I think the shift that happened for me in the course of this film is that as Indian filmmakers, we also have to be able to learn to be much more confident about our own market and to be able to leverage the power of this market because it's huge, you know. And I think in that sense, there was such an interest. So, for example, we got a fabulous China sale. I know for an absolute fact that the reason we got that sale was because there was such an interest in China for Indian films, and that Dhanush represented that trend in a sense. So I think that just as you were saying, you know, it depends on who you're talking to, and you have to be able to talk to them in a language that they understand. In the course of financing your film and raising funds for your film, it's important to be able to understand and leverage those market factors. And in that sense, yes, 100%. I mean, Dhanush was a big part of the reason that the film happened, because we had a big equity infusion into the financial structure of the film. So yeah, 100%, Dhanush made a huge difference.
You know, I'm going to go back to the topic of this discussion, which is decoding international co-production. Now, on the ground, the person or persons who decode physically are the lawyers, right? You spoke about contracts, and all of you have spoken about processes. So, Kulmeet, does the Producers Guild of India can have available or can make available a list of legal people who can help with this process? Because often that's a first stumbling block for many producers.
See, this is something which we have been working on. We have actually taken help of a lot of lawyers who have worked on the co-production in the past. Just to share with you, even the co-production treaty which has been signed by the government of India with 13 countries, we have recreated a draft with those sets of lawyers who understand this, so that moving forward, these treaties can be made more, practical. You know, at times you create a document which is very difficult to follow.
You mean accessible?
Yeah. The usage of a treaty has to be what is happening on ground. It just can't be a document which, is very difficult to implement. So first of all, the film co-production treaty, we want to rename it, and the government is very keen to rename it to audio-visual co-production treaty, so that expands the horizon. It is not just limited to film, you can do many other things around it. Legally, that draft has been changed, and what we are trying to create now is to create a resource where we have the legal brains who come together and also help us to draft contracts when we get into co-production. Guild, if I give you the background, unfortunately, we don't represent a very strong independent producer lobby. We have mainly the mainstream producers. Having said that, we are committed to nurture or to create the second line of producers in years to come, because people who have funds, who have access to funds, they're anyway creating mainstream cinema. People who struggle with funds are the ones who will be the big guys tomorrow. I think we need to work on that. I have to quote this. I was in Cannes Film Festival, and there was a lot of hue and cry about there is no single film as India's entry to Cannes. Then the answer was, well, if people who are funding big time privately, probably they're not looking at festivals as the market. They want to make money if they're investing their own money. So I think that's the reason I'm a strong believer that the public fund is the answer for a lot of wonderful content. And this you have seen in the past, which happens.
just because I'm going to exploit this platform a little bit. Apart from lawyers, I think if we can also create an interface with the Chartered Accountants Institute, because that was one of the big challenges for us, is to be able to go out and find somebody who could actually do the financial structuring end of things, the tax structuring end of things, understanding GST, and we were in that phase when we were going from service tax to GST, and I was very lucky to find somebody who was able to understand the treaties, understand, had a sense of DTAAs, had a sense of what was happening in India, but I think he was a very rare find. It would be great to have more access to people like that. And the other thing is, Naman, we were very lucky because we got a lot of help. So I would say to all the young producers.
From who?
From the FFO. When I started working, it was you felt very proprietary about what you were doing. You didn't want to kind of tell people what was going on, and I think you just hit a place of frustration. And then I started reaching out for help, and I reached out for help with the FFO. We got a lot of support from the French embassy. We got a lot of help from Unifrance. We got a lot of help. So I think one of the things is just like go out and ask for help. So maybe people can start coming to the guild for help with these things, and that.
Absolutely, I think that's what we aspire to do. That if we can create the the talent pool or the the resources which people can access. It's all collective brains which you have to engage with, and if people who are domain experts, if they contribute to help the larger industry cause, is very important.
So I'm glad you raised the FFO. For those of you who are not aware, the Film Facilitation Office is an initiative of the NFDC, and last year they launched a fantastic website which is basically a one-stop shop resource. And tomorrow there's an entire panel that is going to talk about the FFO, so do come for that. And I think we have a few minutes before I open it to questions. So Kulmeet, you want to give let me ask you a leading question. So these public funds that we all desire, that you talked about, I believe it's going to be sooner rather than later. Is this true?
Yeah, actually we were hoping it would happen by now, but let me I think it was mentioned yesterday as well. Honorable Prime Minister of India in January 2019, when he spoke about film facilitation and create a single window of filming in India, we also spoke about creating an economic summit. It is in the line of the Davos Economic Summit. This summit is expected to take place early next year. I'm hoping that all the initiative when it comes to co-production or foreign shoots in India, even the cinema screen density, which we have been struggling with, I think all this initiative will be spoken in that summit, which is only to focus on collaboration. It is not a film festival. It is bringing international talent and Indian talent to come and sit together in technology, in productions, in various other forms of media and entertainment. I think that would be the summit where the announcement would come in, and it's a matter of few months.
So that's excellent news. A round of applause. So we have some 10 minutes for questions. I have some more questions for you, but I think we should open up to the audience. Gentleman in the front row, and followed by Jay.
Yeah, very good afternoon, sir. Hello. Yeah. As in the discussion, it came that caste plays an important role on difference in getting the fund. So how much the actors will be committed and supportive for the makers to get that fund? So in what way? In simple manner, I understand they act as like surety kind, that I will be in your project so that you can act. How much that support you will be getting? And in case for some reasons they cannot do, so what will happen to that fund now? Thank you.
To Teresa?
Oh, I didn't.
Well, I can say one thing for sure, and I think Teresa made that point very clear. While a star is important, I never cast any of my films because of the star or thinking about a star, really. I cast the film because my film needed that actor, and I believe that that is the actor who would be ideal for my film. You know, that the actor also happened to be a star was just a bonus. And I think Teresa actually made it very clear that for a funding agency, the actor or the star is just one aspect of the whole project. You know, that is not unlike in India, for example, in many cases, where a star can make a film happen. It is not the same with funds. With funds, I think more than anything else, it is really your screenplay.
For us, it's really a number of factors, and each time those factors can be different, because it's quite clear that a project for Dawn 2, there's a whole economic machine behind a film like that. So the decision to support Dawn 2 for Berlin, the decision to support that is based on much different factors than a decision to support Kissa or The Lunchbox. We look at those projects completely differently, because in the case of Dawn, there was a huge machine coming to Berlin with lots of investment in the region. It was a big, it was a much more economic-oriented decision in a certain way. And those elements aren't what would make us support a smaller project or an international art house project, and there I can only say once again and very strongly, it's a combination of who the producer is, who all the partners are attached, if there's a strong world sales company, how the financing looks, the screenplay. They're all important, really all important elements, and they have to come together in the best way and strongest way to compete with the other projects in each session. So, and that's why the local partner is so key, because they're the ones who are responsible for putting together this best package and working with the director. And actually, you asked before about what's the best way to get, you know, familiarize yourself with this whole sort of international world of co-productions. For newcomers, in any case, it is attending markets and festivals and being in places where you're going to come in contact in a very informal way, or even through meetings, coming in contact with people who are in the industry. And that's why these markets, Film Bazaar, is so important, actually, because it's a perfect opportunity for people to meet other film professionals.
Thank you.
Aditi, how did you manage to raise funds here in India for a co-production where we have all these tax credits and things like that?
So the money that I raised was with Indian partners based out of Singapore. So I think the conversation that we had with them was essentially to be able to show a financial model where there were recoveries that were pegged on various different aspects, on the director, on the ability of the actor to be able to trigger actors. You know, we had a fabulous international cast as well, to be able to trigger sales. We had a sales company attached on the film very early, which, you know, so we had a sense of the kind of projections that were possible. So essentially it was a sort of staggered recovery across various different types of markets. And it, I think the fund was able to see the sense and sensibility in that. The projections were not crazy. And also I think they wanted to support the project because it was unique in some sense. So yeah, I mean, I would say it ultimately comes down to being able to have a conversation with somebody in a language that they understand. And, you know, sometimes that language is an Excel sheet, so that was...
See, I am from Canada. And
Yes.
Canada did a co-production signing about 7 years ago. And 12 producers were sent here. And I was asked to be their guide, being an Indian in Canada. Till now, in 7 years, I haven't been able to convince any Indian producers to come on board as a co-producer. And Canada is very willing to do co-productions with India. They send 5 producers for 5 years, every year here at Film Bazaar. Finally, last year, they canceled the whole program.
Do you have a question?
Question is, how do you raise money in India? Like she raised money in Singapore.
But the thing is that, yes, India doesn't have a public fund at the moment, that's true. But also we have a massive advantage is that we have a dynamic industry where there is capital and there is money and there is finance. I mean, not many countries in the world have that opportunity. So I think it's also important for Indian producers when they're raising financing is to be able to look at newer avenues. I mean, look, when people set up a tech platform, for example, they don't look only at a specific kind of funder. They go to VCs and hedge funds and, all kinds of, partners outside of the traditional funding model. I think it's possible in India because we do have a dynamic economy, and I think that if we start looking beyond what is traditional, in the sense when I was growing up in producing, in that sense, my approach was always, here's my project, give me money, and you don't give me money because you don't like to support independent films. That was pretty much the approach, and that changed. And as soon as that changed, I think I was able to lock in, and it was a long journey to be able to get there. So I think it will happen, and Canada should continue to please send their producers here.
Last year they decided
and there's a
we don't
gentleman
want to
at the
go.
back. Yeah.
Hi, my question is to Anup and Aditi. So apart from accessing the funds, how open did you have to be creatively to be able to take in inputs on the script from international producers and international funders?
That's a very, very good question, I think. And I think it's related to really the point that I made earlier on, that you choose your producers. You choose whom you are going to collaborate with, because this is a long collaboration. All right. And the kind of film that I would want to make is of a certain kind. So as I said, I'm very, very honest with my producers from the very beginning. I tell them, look, this is the kind of film that I'm going to make. All right. And I don't know whether I should say I've been lucky, because I'm not sure that is the right word. I think I've chosen, or the producers have chosen me because we have believed in the project. And we have worked together to make that project happen. I don't think there is any manipulation or conspiracy that a producer will join you because he or she thinks, I will change it around somehow. I've not faced that at all. In fact, I've just faced support to continue with my vision. All right.
Sometimes that support can be critical discussion about a project. So you may end up discussing changes to a screenplay, but if you're speaking with people, like-minded people or people, who you're working with, in a sense, then maybe there will be changes to a screenplay as a result of discussions, but that isn't necessarily something negative. So, well, I think that those things happen. Yep.
There was another question over there.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I am an independent filmmaker producer from Calcutta. There's a film I made last year called Kia and Cosmos, and it was there in the viewing room last year, so we also managed to bag a Netflix deal, and the film is right now on Netflix. So apart from that, it was also a part of the Marsha film in Cannes, so where I kind of explored the market a bit and understood international sales, like expanding the territories and trying to distribute the film in other countries, and how that can lead to sales and other, kind of like some recovery of that sort. We had managed a film, a co-producer in Germany as well. So my question would be to Mrs. Hoefert about this. So there was a kind of collaboration which I tried to implement, wherein a sound designing company called Saint Audio, who is based out of Budapest, wanted to do the sound production. However, what happened was our producers and the Producers Guild couldn't come to a treaty or come to an understanding where a kind of amount of money was required from their side to say that, yes, it is a co-production. And that would also lead to a release in Germany, you understand? So I would like to know, how the Producers Guild in India or the NFDC can come in the aid of independent filmmakers where their individual efforts or connections can be, groomed or maybe backed up. So, thank you.
Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry, you lost me somewhere in there.
All right.
It was I don't understand what the problem was.
The problem was that there's a co-producer from Germany who backed the film, who liked the film and wanted to co-produce a part of the post-production. However, it didn't materialize due to the fact that there was not enough documents that was exchanged, and that guy wanted someone from the NFDC team or from any other from the government team to support or back the film up. So my question was how we can exploit the international market more, and how some other agencies can come in between the independent filmmakers and producers to bridge the gap between these things.
Well, I believe there are quite a few filmmakers who have made co-productions with India, German filmmakers who have co-productions with German co-producers, there are a number of German Indian co-productions, as I said, Kissa, Lunchbox, Photograph, etc. So it is possible to do. And I don't know the particular details about, the German partner that you had in the doing sound design, but I'm not quite sure what to say on that. And I don't know how it involves public funds either. So I'm not quite clear on the question, to tell the truth.
I think we need to take this offline. It's far too complex to discuss here.
Naman,
I think
sorry,
we have
Naman,
one last question.
No, I just want to clarify what his query was. I think he's talking of Hungary, where we don't have a co-production treaty together, number one. And basically what he's trying to tell us is that he said it's a company out of, did you say Budapest? Yeah. So we don't have an official co-production treaty with Hungary, number one. Number two is, I have done something similar. It can't be under a co-production treaty because I've made a film which we post-produce out of Berlin, where the company comes in as a co-producer to take a stake, either territorial sales of that country, or they become a co-producer as a pari passu, in the pari passu structure for world sales. So I don't think it can't be taken as an official co-production, because with Hungary, I don't think we had any kind of treaty together.
Those are the private co-ventures. No one
Correct.
stops us to do that. So if I also understood, probably maybe if it is not Hungary, some other country, the paperwork is also at times the function of the complexities we have in the treaties. If you're making treaty easier and simple to follow, a lot of this documentation issue would get resolved. But coming back to what you said, I think co-production outside the treaty is always open to do, as far as you're able to raise money. It's a co-venture. You have producer on both the sides, creative team from both the sides. That's okay. That's we can go ahead with.
And in case you have not watched Kia and Cosmos, do watch it. It's a lovely film. I think that's all we have time for this afternoon. Thank you very much.